Fortunately, will not be competing. That's taken away a little of the shine of the meeting, but Jack Brabham, Sir Jack Brabham, Alan Jones, Sterling Moss, they'll all be here lining up, and there'll be 3 races towards the Tribute of Champions this afternoon. Of course, the meeting today at Sandown counts towards the first round of the Australian Touring Car Championship for 1982. And guess what? Who has pole position? None other than Dick Johnson of Queensland with 1:12.9 seconds. He's only marginally faster, though, than that man that always seems to keep him honest, and that's Peter Brock, the lead driver for the Marlborough Holden dealer team. In the second row of the grid, Kevin Bartlett in the 9 Network Camaro, and sharing that row will be Alan Moffat at 1:14.4. There's only 1/10 of a second difference between the third qualifier and the fourth qualifier. So I think we're in for a great Australian Touring Car Championship start this afternoon. Dick Johnson, as expected, the Sandown Park circuit, because of its very, very long straightaways. It's a wide open circuit. It's a very tricky track. Always presents great television watching. So this afternoon, make sure you join us between 1 and 4:30 on the 7 Network. And I'll hand you back now to Rex. Do we get an update on them?
I think I can say who they are. Maybe, I don't know. Let me know when you want me to start.
Rarely will you see such an exotic array of motor racing machinery and such a talented array of past champions, and some of them not so long past either, because Alan Jones is the man out there in the front leading this field of great drivers and great cars in this tribute to the champions at Sandown today.
5 world champions taking part, and one man who just went by who should have been world champion, Sterling Moss. The field led at the moment as we watch David Mackay taking his Aston Martin DB3S and the lovely old Alpha, and Denny Holm going through in the 1938 Mercedes. The field, though, on a 4-lap demonstration run. It's not a race, they say. Can't be a race. Bill Patterson has secured the climax, won the Australian Gold Star in 1961. And here's Jack Brabham. Not Jack Brabham, rather Alan Jones. Jack Brabham behind him. Alan Jones in the Porsche 908. The sports racing car that won the World Championship for such vehicles in 1958.
The value of some of this machinery, Evan, the insurance companies wouldn't allow them to race. Well, they've probably got a stopper under the accelerator.
This is one telecast, so you can be sure that insurance people won't be watching. They don't have the butterflies, because there's more than $4 million worth of cars out there at the moment. A variety of machines, a variety of drivers. Alan Jones in the Porsche 908. Alan Hamilton's private car, the only road-registered 908 in the world. 19 built by the Porsche factory in Stuttgart. Alan doesn't fit in the car, as you can see, so they had to leave the door off. His helmet projects through the roof. But he's been given a bad time. And I think it's Jack Brabham behind him, and Brabham, of course, won the World Championship for the first time in 1959, which was a long time before 1980, when Alan Jones became the second Australian to win the World Championship. 2 vastly different sorts of cars, both quite historic vehicles. The Repco Brabham that won for Jack Brabham the World Championship in 1966, making him the only man ever to win a World Championship in a car of his own construction. The Ferrari, the big Swallow model, being driven by Larry Perkins. Best known, I suppose, to Australian motor racing followers in recent times as the partner of Peter Jansen, but a man with Formula One experience, Denny Holm, 46 years of age, a New Zealander, driving the 1938 Mercedes-Benz W154, the most valuable car in Australia. It is priceless, but if you were to put a figure on it, the factory agrees that somewhere around $800,000 mightn't be a bad mark. 12-cylinder, double superchargers on the engine. Built with a budget in 1938 of $30 million. Imagine what that would be today to win the World Championship. There was no World Championship, to win the European Championship, which Rudy Caracciola did. Denny Hulme was only a boy in those days.
Well, Mercedes certainly dominated right through that period, didn't they? Tremendous cars and tremendous money that was spent on Formula One racing in those days, even compared to today's standards.
It's a car of extraordinary features. I was talking to Denny Hulme saying, what's it like getting into the car? He says, it's like stepping into a 44-gallon drum, because he's surrounded by 80 gallons, 400 litres of fuel, not your ordinary petrol, but a brew of alcohol and explosives that is so corrosive that if it isn't drained and washed through the system, it will eat out the whole fuel system of the car. It was needed to give it the extraordinary power that they had in those days and to cool the engine as well and act as a lubricant. But the fuel tanks are behind the driver and on top of him. The one tank is in effect the dashboard wrapped around his legs. If you had a bump in that, you would go out of this world in a very spectacular fashion. But a glorious machine. Drum brakes, narrow tyres. The tyres are worth $1,000 each because they have to be handmade these days. But Denny Hulme driving probably certainly the most valuable car here today. He weighs Bill Patterson by him, who won the Gold Star back in '61 in the Cooper Climax. There's a mixture of cultures. The cars that dispossessed the big roaring monsters of the 30s, the little rear engine Brabhams. And here's my favourite. Here's the Alfa Romeo 1935 P3.
Now that's elegant, isn't it?
Tony Gay's driving it. If he had a rollover, he'd be one of the first to know. But the car is the one that the great Tazio Nuvolari used to win the 1935 German Grand Prix at the Nürburgring. It was a car in which he beat the Mercedes, not the ones we saw, but the earlier models, which were more powerful. Those ones in those days developed 646 horsepower, and the Auto Unions as well. And one of the great races of all time to when Nuvolari won the German Grand Prix in that year. Now, this car is owned by the New Zealand farmer, Bill Clark, who bought it for $600. Oops, there's a slightly unconventional passing move. That's Jack Brabham, showing he hasn't lost any of his old ability to take an unconventional line.
Nice tyres, just ask Jack.
And Tony Gaze, who raced with the Kangaroo team, David Mackay, Dick Cobden, and poor old Tony Salmon, overseas in England in the 50s. Their whole career was thwarted by the great accident at Le Mans in 1955, and they came home. But Tony driving the Alfa, there was this car in which, as I say, Nuvolari won the German Grand Prix. He was leading the race, Nuvolari, as we watch Alan Jones, held up in the pits for 2.5 minutes because of a problem with the pump. Down goes the brake. Jack Brabham has won the race, if you're interested. It's Alan Jones who comes second, so Jack Brabham can say, oh, well, I might have been world champion 21 years before Jonesy, but I can still beat him.
Move over, youngster.
And the checkered flag there for Nuvolari's ex-car, so Brabham wins from Jones. Tony Gaze, I think he's been lapped a couple of times, but at least he has the satisfaction of being the third man to see the car, and we'll continue telling you the story of Nuvolari at some other time. These cars will be out here 4 times today, and it's just a lovely nostalgic occasion to see some of the great drivers and great cars. David Mackay in the Aston Martin DBS, in which he set, in fact still holds the Australian land speed record back in 1958 for cars of that sort. He did it on a dirt road and covered 158 miles an hour. Tony Gaze gazing at the marshals. There's Patterson in the little Cooper. We'll be looking at other drivers as we follow other races here today, or demonstrations. We mustn't call them races. They're merely a chance for these greats of the past, both in an Australian sense and internationally, to come here and show cars which have helped to create history. Sterling Moss, whom we'll see in much greater detail later, in the C-Type Jaguar, the first of the racing Jags, superseded by the D-Type, which was a much more powerful car. Moss won the TT in that. Reg Hunt is just behind him in the Maserati 300S, a former Moss Works car, which was used by Doug Whiteford to win a number of Australian sports car races in the late 1950s. Sterling Moss still wearing his old classic open helmet. Reg Hunt almost took the nose off a valuable car as he took the Mazda, which he owns himself, into the pits, and here's Denny Hulme. Doesn't want to go in, I'm sure. He's having such a ball driving a car that's a piece of history. But the New Zealander who was world champion in 1967, driving for Jack Brabham's Brabham team, takes the Mercedes-Benz that was the world or the European championship car in 1938 into the pits. Alan Jones waving to the marshals. He's had one extra lap in the Porsche 908. And Jack Brabham, the official winner of the race in the 1966 Repco Brabham. Alan Jones, second in the race in the 1968, yes, 2 years later, Porsche, but a sports car built for endurance races. Alan Hamilton's private car, and as I was saying, the only road-registered Porsche in the world, the 908, a very rare and potent car. And Tony Gaze setting up in the cars like they used to, like they used to make. The lovely Alfa Romeo P3, bought for $600 by Bill Clark a few years or 20 years ago, and now be worth maybe $500,000. He won't sell it. It's priceless. Yes, Nuvolari won the German Grand Prix just by outstanding driving. Had a long pit stop, but caught Manfred von Brauchitsch on the last lap of the race when the Mercedes that Brauchitsch was driving had a flat tyre, and Nuvolari won in that car. And Tony Gaze would have more than a glisten in the eye, I would think, feeling that he was sitting in the car that was so much a part of the history of motor racing.
Bob.
Evan,
Yep.
I've heard of milking something. You just squeezed the life out of it.
You've just squeezed every last drop out of it. We've still got 3 to go.
Oh, a lot more to say. We haven't even touched Stirling Moss. Gee, they're hard to follow, aren't they? They started the race before we knew they'd got going. Yeah. All right. Well, we might be able to do more in the next race anyhow. You might want to use that because we've got 3 other occasions to see them. Right. Right. Yes, they've got the air-cooled cars in the front row because they need a bit of warming up. The 3 Porsches are starting from the front.
Yes.
We did do a corner item on Stirling Moss talking about what it was like to drive the C-Type Jaguar. You might like to get him next time. He's due to appear in the 3rd race again in the Jaguar. So you might just want to run the corner wipe then when he talks about what it was like. It was a brute of a car, you know, and so forth.
Are there any others that have got to be running? Oh, now it's all go.
Meanwhile, back on lap 30, the tears streaming down his eyes, Nuvolari come back in. You were touching my car, I donated your fuel bus. Oh, and then we're safe to say anything about it.
Oh, that bloke, Lisa. You're a white type.
Oh, very well, thank you. Oh, yeah, I just got to do a cross for water sport. I don't need a phone.
Hayden first. Left to Hayden, definitely 68.
Is aim on here? I don't think so. No, sorry.
He's only farming.
2 minutes? Okay.
This was like,
What are we going to talk about? Oh, we'll talk about what a great day it is. Yeah, that's right. This is going to be tomorrow night, 11 o'clock, as you realise.
Yes. This is. Oh, that's in Melbourne.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know whether they're going to be running in any pictures of the stuff that we've just done, or
They won't in Melbourne, I
wide
don't think,
shots.
because of
No,
1
I
hour.
mean,
stand by, please. Here we go.
wow.
Let's go.
Who?
Yes, please,
am I?
Mike.
Oh, we want Mike as well, do we? Oh, all right.
Is this all right, or do you want it up home?
I mean, you haven't got to carry on. Don't get upset. Sit down.
No, well, it's they keep changing their minds about what they want. Am I saying hello to somebody and back to somebody? Hello, Bill, and back to Bill?
Wait's right.
Both ends of the spectrum. How long?
17 minutes.
12 minutes? Yes. When you talk about one race.
Let Evan tell the Nuvolari story.
Yeah, I
That
haven't
ought
quite
to-
got that through. Yeah. I think if we can tell it with a bit of
Couple of
Italian.
minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll just say... Hey, thanks, Bill. It's a bit of a switch for me to be at Sandown and not you, but for a different purpose, of course. And this is tribute to the Champions Day in motor racing, and it also, the meeting here features the first round of the 1982 Australian Touring Car Championship. Going to be a phenomenal day's motor racing, and of course viewers through HSV and associate stations in Victoria will be able to see all the highlights of the meeting telecast at 11 o'clock tomorrow evening. But just to talk briefly about the program and what you're going to be seeing in it, firstly, Evan Green, tribute to the champions. The cars that they've got here and some of the great champions really are breathtaking.
They are. They say the value of the cars is $4 million. They're priceless. You've got cars that range from the 1935 Alfa Romeo P3, the ex-Nuvolari car. You have the 1938 Mercedes-Benz W154, the dearest, the most expensive, the most valuable racing car in the world, supposedly worth $800,000. We have Jack Brabham driving his own Repco Brabham, in which he won the World Championship in 1966. Alan Jones in a variety of cars. Sterling Moss, one of the great figures in Jaguars and Porsches. Oh, it's really, who wants motor racing when you can just look and ogle at the cars and recollect what these drivers did?
That's the sort of thing that you can see, and I mean, if